You are not born with certainty, but with whispers that cling to the wind like frost on pine branches. No rune stone bears your name. No parchment records your first cry. Some murmur that you are the son of a king, heir to a fragile crown. Others scoff and say your father owned nothing more than a herd of stubborn goats and a temper sharper than any blade. And your mother? She exists more as a rumor than a woman. She might have been noble. She might have been a spirit wrapped in human skin. Or she might simply have been the kind of mother who told you troll stories at night. Tales so vivid that you half believed you had fought those creatures yourself before you ever held a sword. None of it matters. In the north, truth is pliable, but destiny is iron. The fog of your homeland has a way of swallowing facts and spitting out legends. And you, Ragnar, are already claimed by myth before you even know your own name. Your childhood is carved from hunger and hardship. The air bites your lungs with every breath. You eat fish until you dream of scales and salt, until even the smell of smoke-dried cod becomes part of your skin. The huts are dark, damp, and crowded, filled with more silence than laughter. Ash clings to your clothes. Cold seeps into your bones. You learn that warmth is earned through labor, not given. Before you can read a single rune, you learn to grip a wooden sword. Its weight heavy and awkward in your small hands. Reading is for priests and poets, and in your world, survival is written in scars, not in ink. But fate, like the sea, is relentless. One day a man appears, an old figure with one eye clouded like stormwater, his face a map of wounds. He reeks of herring left too long in the sun. Yet when he speaks, even your father listens. He declares that the gods have marked you for greatness, that you will carve your name into history with blood and steel. You are too young to understand, but old enough to nod. Even in your childish silence, you feel it, that strange, heavy pull toward destiny. Then comes the moment that makes you unforgettable. While other boys chase goats and mend nets, you take the hide of an animal, maybe a bear, maybe nothing more than a furious goat, and you stitch it into trousers. They are ugly, hairy, ridiculous. The village laughs. The men call you foolish. But the laughter only feeds the fire in your chest. A nickname is born, and it clings to you like the cold. Ragnar Lothbrok, hairy breeches. At first, it is mockery. Soon, it becomes a badge. You wear those trousers to meals, to hunts, to battles. And somewhere between ridicule and defiance, the joke becomes prophecy. The sea calls you before you are ready. A calloused hand thrusts an oar into your grasp and orders you to row. No one explains, no one comforts. Vikings are not nurtured, they are forged. You row until your palms split, until blisters bleed, and then harden into calluses. The drum beats like an angry god, echoing in your skull, and the longship stretches into eternity. You row beside giants with names like Skull Splitter and Eric the Flatulent, men whose laughter shakes the planks and whose fists could break you in half. The meals are nothing but dried fish and salt water, the air heavy with sweat and fear. The sea is merciless, freezing, infinite, and yet it begins to accept you. You learn to balance, to breathe with the waves, to see direction in the stars. Every stroke pulls you further from boyhood. By your teenage years, you are no longer just another hungry child of the north. You have weathered storms that shattered ships, vomited on chieftains' boots and survived his wrath, bailed water with trembling hands and lived when others drowned. Your muscles ache but grow hard. Your skin is roughened by salt and frost. And then, one morning, as mist curls around the prow of your ship, you face your first true raid. The monastery looms, silent and peaceful, its bell towers reaching into the dawn. To the monks, it is a house of God. To you, it is a vault waiting to be opened. You storm its halls, the clash of axes against wood echoing like thunder. Men in robes cower, clutching chalices, and muttering Latin prayers you do not understand. To them, you are a nightmare in flesh. To you, they are weak prey, guardians of silver and bread. You take what you can carry, coins, goblets, food. And for good measure, a monk who trembles as though you are death itself. You don't even know why you bring him, only that something in his terrified eyes fascinates you. By the time you sail away, you are no longer Ragnar the boy with strange trousers. You are Ragnar, whispered in the frightened prayers of Christendom. But a saga is never told alone. Out of the smoke and blood comes Lagertha. She is not just a woman. She is steel wrapped in flesh, a shield maiden whose presence commands respect. She fights better than most of your crew, her eyes sharper than any blade. You don't know if it's love or awe or the concussion she gives you during your first duel. But you cannot look away. To win her hand, you are told to face a trial. Kill a bear and a dog with nothing but a stick. Any other man would laugh, refuse, or die trying. You fight, battered and bleeding, but in the end you stand over the corpses, still breathing. She agrees to marry you. Marriage to Lagertha is no gentle affair. Affection is measured in survival. Some mornings she greets you with a kiss, other mornings with the flat of an axe. Breakfast is both meal and negotiation. Passion and rivalry blur together until one day you realize you cannot stay. You leave, not from weakness, but because destiny is a river that never stops flowing. And so Thora enters your story. Noble, radiant, but trapped by a guardian unlike any other. Not a man, not a king, but a serpent. A real, writhing, fanged monster. Suitors try and fail, their bones left in coils of scales. But you, Ragnar, walk forward in your ridiculous hairy trousers with only a spear and your defiance. You slay the beast, win Thora's hand, and with her, another legend to your name. By now, children surround you, prophecies trail you, and the world begins to bend under the weight of your reputation. You are no longer just a man of flesh and bone. You are a myth unfolding, one raid, one scar, one whispered tale at a time. You never wear a crown. You never sit on a throne gilded in gold. Yet they call you king, not because of rituals, not because of bloodlines, but because you are harder to kill than anyone else. Because your ships are more numerous. Because your enemies whisper your name with fear even in their prayers. Viking politics is no council chamber. It is chaos, half drunken brawl, half trial by axe. To be king here is to outlive, outfight, and outtweet those who would see you drowned. Your hall is smoky, filled with warriors who smell of sweat and mead, poets whose verses change facts into miracles, and drunks who argue over whether you truly fought a sea serpent or simply a big fish. To rule is to buy loyalty with treasure and feasts, to keep your enemies close enough to drink from your cup, but not close enough to stab you. It is to pretend that a map scratched in charcoal on damp leather represents something called a kingdom. Your dominion is not measured by borders, but by where your ships last landed and where your enemies still tremble. But you are not remembered for borders. You are remembered for theater. You understand something most rulers never grasp. Fear is not enough. Spectacle is what endures. And so you set your eyes on Paris. Not just for gold, not just for glory. Paris is a jewel, a city of walls, relics, and wine that reeks of arrogance. A stage so grand that if you conquer it, your name will be etched forever. You sail with a fleet so vast that it darkens the river like a storm cloud. The Franks see your sails and collapse into panic. Priests rush to baptize whole crowds at once. Nobles lock themselves in towers. Bishops write desperate prayers begging their god to send lightning to strike your ships. But no lightning comes. Only you, Ragnar. At the gates of Paris, you put on your greatest performance. You tie skulls to your prows so that the ships look possessed by spirits. You let your men scream until their voices crack. a chorus of chaos that rattles the very stones of the walls. You stage duels on the boats, sword dances, rituals that look like madness and divinity intertwined. You want Paris not just to fear you. You want them to feel haunted by you. Then you invent the trick that will echo for centuries. You fake your own death. You lie down in your ship, arms crossed, eyes closed, body still as stone. Your men wail, sobbing, begging for your burial in the great cathedral as a final honor to a fallen warrior. The Franks, trapped between fear of Odin's wrath and Christian ritual, open their gates. They bring you into the very heart of their city. And then, at the peak of their ceremony, in the silence of their prayers, you rise. You sit up in your coffin, eyes wild, breath heavy, like a corpse reborn. The bishop drops his Bible, priests scream, nobles faint, and the people of Paris believe they have seen death itself walk. Before they can recover, your men strike. Treasure is seized, relics are stolen, and the city learns what it means to be conquered not just by force, but by imagination. You leave Paris not merely as a victor, but as a phantom. You are no longer just Ragnar the man. You are Ragnar the myth, the deathless, the trickster who rose from his own grave. Mothers will whisper your name to their children as a warning. Obey, or Ragnar will return from the dead to storm your home. But age spares no man, not even those claimed by saga. Your hair grays, your face creases, and your enemies wait like wolves circling a wounded stag. Among them is King Aella of Northumbria, whose pride you have shattered time and again. He is a man made of grudges, carved in stone, and he wants not just your death. He wants your humiliation. And so you sail again, not with hundreds of ships, not with thousands of men, but with only a handful. Why? Perhaps pride, perhaps stubbornness, perhaps the poetry of an old warrior seeking one last battle. But pride blinds, and Aella is ready. You are captured. Shackles bite your wrists. The people of Northumbria gather to watch, their eyes burning with the hunger for vengeance. Aella smiles when he declares your sentence: death in the snake pit. The words alone are enough to silence the crowd. They march you through the jeering mob, chains rattling with every step, until you stand at the edge of the pit. The air reeks of venom and musk. Inside, dozens of serpents writhe, their scales glistening, their tongues flickering, their fangs ready. Any other man would tremble, would beg, would cry out. But you laugh. Even as the guards shove you forward, even as the snakes coil around your body, you laugh. Their fangs pierce your skin, venom burning through your veins. Yet your voice only grows louder. You chant poetry, verses so old that even the oldest warriors shiver hearing them. You call out to Odin, to Valhalla, to the sons you have raised in blood and prophecy. You promise vengeance so vivid that the crowd begins to doubt their own victory. Your body weakens, your knees falter, but your spirit blazes. You lift your head and declare that your sons will bring storms, that England itself will drown in their fury. And then, with a final grin, part defiance, part prophecy, you fall. The snakes feast. The crowd watches in silence, torn between triumph and unease. King Aella believes he has ended Ragnar Lothbrok, but in truth, he has unleashed him. Because the moment your body goes still, your legend catches fire. Across the North Sea, your sons hear of your death, and their hearts ignite. Bjorn Ironside sharpens his axe until sparks fly. Ivar the Boneless smiles like a devil who just heard a prophecy confirmed. Ub and Sigurd prepare their fleets. The great heathen army is born. Aella thought he killed a man. Instead, he created a storm. Ragnar Lothbrok does not end in a pit of snakes. Ragnar Lothbrok is reborn as vengeance itself, carried on the oars of his sons, carved into the prayers of his enemies, and whispered in fear long after the venom dries. Centuries pass. Ragnar's saga fades into echoes, but humanity never stops turning life and death into spectacle. The Viking raids give way to the smoke of factories, the carriages of London, and the rigid etiquette of the Victorian age. Yet the hunger for ritual remains. In this world, mourning is not hidden. It is worn, displayed, and sold. London streets darken with veils, heavy black fabrics, and the dull sheen of jet jewelry. Drapers stock endless bolts of crepe. Undertakers march in solemn silence, and jewelers craft brooches containing locks of the dead. To grieve is not simply to feel. It is to perform. A widow, wrapped in black from head to toe, is expected to vanish from society for 2 years. Men, by contrast, wear a black armband for a few weeks and return to life as if nothing happened. The double standard is carved into the very fabric of grief. Homes transform into theaters of remembrance. Parlors display hairwork wreaths. Flowers woven from strands of the departed, preserved under glass domes. Black-bordered stationery carries condolences across the empire. Families keep miniature shrines. Portraits framed with ivy, preserved funeral flowers, jewelry that carries the presence of the dead against the skin. To us, such objects might seem macabre. To them, they were sacred anchors in a world where disease and accidents claimed lives suddenly, without mercy. And then, the photograph. Heavy cameras are hauled into quiet homes where bodies lie still. Infants gone too soon are posed as if sleeping. Adults are seated in chairs, faces powdered to soften death's touch. Some photographers even paint eyes open on the final print, creating the illusion of life. To Victorian families, these images are treasures, often the only picture they would ever own of a loved one. To us, unsettling. To them, eternal. Even funerals become theater. Hearses draped in ostrich plumes roll through crowded streets, processions stretching for blocks. The wealthy measure their devotion by the length of the carriage line. The poor bankrupt themselves to avoid shame. Professional mutes are hired to walk beside coffins, their silence more eloquent than tears. Flowers carry coded messages. Lilies for purity, ivy for eternal life, evergreens for resurrection. To bury the dead is no private act. It is a public declaration of love, virtue, and status. Death itself becomes an economy. Mourning clothes, mourning jewelry, mourning photography. Entire industries thrive on grief. Critics mock the extravagance, yet to most Victorians, ritual provides order in a chaotic world. Epidemics strike without warning. Minds collapse. Children vanish overnight to scarlet fever or diphtheria. And when grief threatens to consume, society answers. Put it in fabric, in rules, in rituals. Make it visible. Make it bearable. But if Victorians staged grief, the Tudors staged power. 2 centuries earlier, long before Queen Victoria's endless black, the courts of Henry VIII and Elizabeth I turned the banquet table into a weapon sharper than any sword. A Tudor feast was not about eating, it was about awe. Picture a great hall lit by hundreds of candles, tapestries telling stories of conquest hanging from the walls. At the center, a table raised on a dais where the monarch sits like a god among mortals. The first dish arrives, a roasted boar's head, gilded in gold, tusks shining in torchlight. Then a swan, cooked and redressed in its own feathers, neck arched as if alive. Then pies that burst open to release live birds, fluttering across the hall as musicians strike their lutes and trumpets announce the next course. Sugar, rare and precious, becomes the soul of spectacle. Confectioners craft subtleties, castles, roses, crowns, sculpted from sugar paste and painted with gold leaf. Guests eat propaganda disguised as dessert. A sugar fortress says, England is strong. A sugar rose proclaims, the Tudor dynasty endures. Even the smallest sweet carries the weight of politics. And then the seating, the invisible language of power. Those above the salt sit closest to the monarch, honored and favored. Those below the salt sit farther away, their distance a reminder of their rank. Ambassadors note every placement, every gesture. To sit near the king is to rise. To be pushed to the margins is a warning. Politics is measured not just in treaties, but in inches of table space. The hall itself is alive with entertainment. Masks of gods and virtues parade between courses, allegories designed to flatter the crown. Jesters hurl sharp jokes, jugglers toss flaming torches, acrobats leap to thunderous applause. Even eating is ritualized. The monarch does not touch food until servants perform elaborate ceremonies of hand-washing and tasting. Every detail whispers authority. Seasons and religion shape the menu. During Lent, fish replaces meat, but it arrives in such lavish abundance, eels, salmon, imported cod, that restraint becomes another form of extravagance. At Christmas, a boar's head is paraded with song. At Easter, lamb and eggs symbolize rebirth. The year itself becomes a cycle of ritualized feasts, each one an opportunity to remind guests of power, wealth, and divine favor. And so, across time, the pattern repeats. Ragnar's death is turned into myth, Victorian grief into commerce, Tudor banquets into theater. Different centuries, same instinct. To transform life into spectacle. Humanity does not simply live. It performs. It mourns in fabric, it feasts in fire, it dies in legend. Ragnar's laughter in the snake pit. Victoria's black veil sweeping the floor. Henry's sugar castles gleaming under candlelight. Different stories, same truth. Memory lasts only when it is staged.